Chapter 9. In April 1989, Robert Huerito Grattan arrived at Corcoran State Prison, CSPC in Corcoran, 40 miles south of Fresno, at the heart of California's principal farming valley. He had no way of knowing that the instructions and/or orders he was given by NR security officer Robert Littleman Garcia would shape his career as a prison gang member. He did just as he was told. Once at CSP Corcoran, Grattan's orders were to report to the authority in charge, inform the leadership of his NR status, and function hand in hand with all other NR and NF members at the facility. This was a common practice enforced and adhered to by all NR members transferred from one facility to another. As with all new arrivals, Grattan was initially housed in the orientation section of the prison. He was given a copy of the institutional rules and regulations and a correctional lecture that explained the expectations for inmates. The next day, he received a dental, physical, and psychological examination and was seen by the Unit Classification Committee, UCC, cleared for general population and given a C facility housing assignment. This first classification chrono read, UCC classification chrono dated April 14, 1989. Grattan made a personal appearance before the Unit Classification Committee this date for the purpose of initial classification. Subject is the 25-year-old first-termer received Corcoran April 13, 1989 from DVI RC for Level 3 placement. Subject was originally received CDC March 17, 1989 from Stanislaus County for the commitment offense of sales of a controlled substance and escape with a term of 4 years. Prior arrest history consists of possession of a legal weapon, health and safety code violation, RSP, PT, burglary, assault and battery, resisting PO, and escape. No history of arson or sex offenses noted. However, subject has a non-controlling case of escape on December 1st, 1987. Subject walked away from his work detail at the Stanislaus Honor Farm. No prior prison terms holds detainers. Subject has a possible warrant from Stanislaus County and Modesto. An IOI has been sent. CDC 812 and confidential file are clear. There is an unlisted GPL, which subject claims, however, to have a GED. Work skills listed as construction worker. He is medically classified as full duty in camp. PC 2930, 2933, 2934, and appeal rights were explained. Subject was advised he would be earning status A2B until receipt of a full-time assignment. Signed B. Chavez, PA, M. Montero, CC2, R. Gonzalez, CC1. With instructions in hand, orientation behind him, and inside information regarding who was already functioning at CSP Corcoran, Grattan knew firsthand who to get in contact with, which was his cousin, Richard R.B. Bernal, who would give him a quick briefing to find out who was still active on the yard. He was introduced to Sheldon Skip Villanueva, who was in charge of overall security and a very well-known, respected, and intelligent NF member from San Jose. Villanueva quickly took a liking to Grattan and immediately approved his NR membership. With an open mind, NR acceptance, Grattan settled in. He wrote a quick letter, made a few phone calls, and celled with Johnny J. Cat Sanchez, a well-known, liked, and low-key youngster from Sacramento doing 20 years for armed robbery. It turned out that Grattan and Sanchez knew a lot of the same people. Sanchez had been instructed to introduce Grattan to everyone who was of any concern to NR or NF. Both friend and foe were identified, and Grattan was grateful for Sanchez's assistance. Grattan spent a lot of time with Sanchez, who would eventually become one of his good friends. It didn't take Grattan much longer, however, to figure out the rest of the program for himself. After being given a first-hand tour of the prison, Grattan was assigned to function under the authority and/or guidance of Joseph Jojo Moreno, an extremely dangerous, well-known, and respected NF member from Stockton, who was also second in command of overall security. He was also introduced to a few of his fellow NR members, Johnny Night Owl Perez from Stockton, Robert L. Joker Juarez from Daly City, Robert Angel Rodriguez from Daly City, and his cousin Vince Chente Rodriguez from Sacramento, Darren Smiley Harden from Santa Rosa, and their squad leader Pete Pistol Pete Ruiz from Soledad, a very sophisticated, well-schooled, and original member of the Nuestra Raza. Ruiz gave Grattan a copy of Nuestra Raza's rules and regulations, aka the 14 bonds. Ruiz spent a couple of hours with Grattan, explaining his responsibilities and letting him know what was expected of a new NR member. He informed Grattan that it was mandatory for all NR members to memorize both the 14 bonds and the NR format. Grattan spent the next couple of days studying the 14 bonds and the NR format and being introduced to numerous NR and NF members on the yard. He was impressed with their sophistication, knowledge, and know-how. Most of these gangsters had intellectual stature. Grattan, with no idea of the amount of time, effort, and energy these Northern California prison gangs put into educating their members, decided to make his own education a priority. After familiarizing himself with the institution, being introduced to his fellow hermanos, and studying his ass off, Juanito discovered firsthand the importance of his training. On the morning of May 4th, 1989, 3 weeks after Grattan's arrival at CSP Corcoran, Sheldon Skip Villanueva called for all NF and NR members to get together at the handball courts for an emergency meeting. Grattan knew it would have nothing to do with handball. Once on the courts, all regimental members were advised that one of their allies, a border brother, BB, from Merced, had caught wind that Sureños were planning an attack and targeting any and all Norteños during the next day's Cinco de Mayo festivities. This was a surprise celebration Norteños could do without. Norteños, outnumbered 7-1, decided to make a preemptive strike. Plans were made, targets set, and weapons supplied. A few hours later, all hell broke loose when 15 to 20 Norteños went into the C Facility Gymnasium and attacked a large group of unsuspecting Sureños. The attack itself was precise, well calculated, and perfectly timed. Certain individuals were assigned specific targets. It was none other than Joseph Jojo Moreno who made the first move and caused the most damage. He came alarmingly close to killing Stymie, a Sureño from La Puente, whom he viciously stabbed in the throat with an 8-inch piece of metal sharpened at the tip. This move was, in fact, prearranged and a signal to other Norteños to begin their attacks. Although the melee itself lasted no more than 10 to 15 minutes, at least 7 Sureños were gravely wounded. By the time C Facility's correctional staff responded, blood, bodies, and prison-made weapons were scattered across the gymnasium floor. The prison staff secured the gym and searched the inmates and the surrounding area. Those who were identified as participants were handcuffed, removed from C Facility, and placed in the administrative segregation (ADSEG) section of the prison. Grattan received a CDC 115 incident report which read, CDC 115 Incident Rules Violation Report. On May 4th, 1989, at approximately 14:30 hours, you were positively identified as being involved in a rival gang fraction, North-South confrontation, in the Facility 3C gym. You were subsequently placed in mechanical restraints, handcuffed, and placed in administrative segregation. Signed, R. Harrison. After being escorted to the ADSEG unit, Grattan was confined to quarters CTQ for 10 days, denied access to the ADSEG recreational yards while on CTQ, and given a mandatory lockup order which read, CDC 114 order and hearing for placement in administrative segregation. You are being placed in administrative segregation on May 4th, 1989 at approximately 14:30 hours due to your involvement in a confrontation between rival factions, North and South, Hispanics, in Facility 3C gym. You are deemed a threat to the safety and security of the institution and will remain in administrative segregation pending further investigation and administrative review. This action is being initiated by Signed, VJ Quinn, Lieutenant, 2nd Watch. 2 weeks later, Grattan was seen by the Institutional Classification Committee, ICC, and received an initial classification review and a classification chrono, which read, Initial Review, ICC Classification. On May 16, 1989, Grattan appeared before ICC this date, or Initial ADSEG Review. Following placement in ADSEG on May 4, 1989, for participation in a North-South Mexican confrontation on the Facility 3C yard. Documentation review indicates a 114D was completed in sufficient detail and no staff assistant or investigative employee was assigned, as subject is not illiterate and the issues of placement are not complex. A right hearing was conducted this date in ICC with the decision to retain ADSEG status pending investigation. Grattan is aware of program and visiting limitations in ADSEG. He indicates good health and is making satisfactory adjustment in current placement. Signed, T. Simpson, AWA, Argyle, PA, D. Pearson, CC3. A couple of days after his initial review, Grattan was seen by CSP Corcoran's disciplinary committee, which took the following actions. On May 18, 1989, inmate Grattan made a personal appearance at the hearing and appeared to be in good health. Subject was provided all relative documents to his hearing at least 24 hours prior to adjudication. Subject denies the charges as written. Findings. Subject was found guilty based on submitted report. Subject was in the area and a part of the incident. Recommended subject not return to Facility 3C. Due to numerous amount of CDC 115s involved in this incident and the importance of the investigative employees report, time constraints are based on the delivery of IE to the inmate and are intact. Action taken. Subject was advised of these findings and his right to appeal. This is an incident which all inmates involved were equally responsible, resulted in 7 injured inmates and numerous weapons being found. In view of this, an A1 classification is deemed appropriate. Assessed 360 days credit loss consistent with a Division A offense. 10 days administrative segregation with credit for time served. Counsel with reprimand. Referred to Institutional Classification Committee for confirmation of credit loss and recommend subject not be returned to Facility 3C. Signed, T. Simpson, AW, VJ Quinn, PA, J. Flores, Prague Lieutenant. The following day, all those identified as being involved in the North-South confrontation were finally cleared for ADSEG recreation. While on the yard, Villanueva ordered all NF and NR members to participate in a peaceful demonstration in protest of ADSEG conditions, lack of recreation, and the correctional staff's refusal to issue personal property taken from those removed from C facility. This CDC 115 incident report read, CDC 115 Incident Rules Violation Report. On Friday, May 19, 1989, at approximately 14:15 hours, during scheduled yard recall, you refused to exit the Facility 3A recreation yard and were observed to be an active participant in a peaceful sit-down and/or unlawful assembly. You refused several direct orders from staff to exit the yard, citing your protest to be in regards to ADSEG conditions and various other complaints. Emergency measures were implemented, and during the process and after deliberation with administrative staff, you agreed to exit the yard at 16:35 hours. You were identified by ADSEG staff as being one of the 56 inmates taking part in the unlawful assembly. You were being charged with violation of DR 3005C for your participation. Inmate notified upon receipt. Signed, Sergeant M. Ledbetter, ADSEG Sergeant. After organizing a peaceful sit-down and receiving their property, the leadership began regrouping and reorganizing a regimental stronghold. Leaders were chosen, squads assigned, and instructions issued. Grattan was amazed at how quickly these seasoned soldados were able to adapt to their new surroundings, reestablish chain of command, and implement an effective set of NR household policies and procedures, which can vary from household to household, but that read, in accordance with all other rules and regulations, the following household policies and procedures have been designed and or developed with the best interests, safety, and well-being of all Norteños. 1. All Norteños are expected to honor their commitment and to conduct themselves in a professional manner at all times. 2. Our security at the chain of command are of the utmost importance and shall be respected as such. 3. Orders and instructions are not to be questioned. It is each Norteño's responsibility to do everything in his capability to fulfill his obligations. 4. If a Norteño has any questions and or a problem of some sort, it shall be brought to the attention of his squad leader. 5. All Norteños shall remain awake and alert during the hours of unlock. It is required that shoes must be worn during these hours. 6. It is each Norteño's responsibility to stay abreast of his surroundings, as any and all internal discussions are to be kept within our circles, and no words pertaining to our schooling are to be spoken to any outsiders. 7. All Norteños shall be required to participate in our daily calisthenics. Those with a verified medical condition are the only exception to this rule. 8. Yard is mandatory. There are no exceptions. 9. All paperwork, weapons, and weapon stock must be secured at all times, especially while away from oneself. And 10. We as Norteños must lead as examples. Failure to adhere to these household policies and procedures will be considered as an act of insubordination and will be dealt with accordingly. Upon reading these household policies and procedures, Grattan spent the next 2 weeks learning about the struggle, its goals, and the importance of unity. He also learned how to make, secure, and utilize a wide variety of weapons. With his wealth of information, and in a test of his loyalty, he was called upon to handle Jack Cabada, a Fresno bulldog who had gotten into a cell fight and bitten off the ear of Herminio Spanquillo Serna, an NR member from San Jose. Said CDC 115 incident report read, CDC 115 incident rules violation report. On May 31st, 1989, at approximately 13:10 hours while working at said gun position, I observed 2 unidentified inmates, later identified as Grattan E12048, 3A03, 111 up, and inmate Cabada C39783, 3A03, 207 up, engaged in a physical altercation, fistfight. It should be noted that inmate Cabada was the aggressor and instigated the first punch. I ordered Cabada and Grattan several times to stop fighting and lay on the ground. They continuously ignored my orders. I then fired one .264 multi-baton round from the 37mm gun. Both inmates immediately stopped fighting and complied with my orders to lay face down. Oh man, you're supposed to keep going. I then ordered all inmates on the yard to lie down, which they complied. All inmates were removed from the yard and placed in their assigned cells. Both Cabada and Grattan were seen by the MTA and released to ADSEG staff. Signed, C.O. Walside. 2 weeks later, Grattan was back in front of the Institutional Classification Committee to confirm his loss of credit. This classification read, oh my God, CDC 128G, classification dated 6/13/1989. Grattan was placed in ADSEG on 5/4/89 for participation in a North-South Mexican confrontation on the Facility C yard. Rules violation reported dated 5/4/89, log number 5893060, charging subject with participation in a rival gang confrontation. This RVR was adjudicated on 6/6/89. Subject was found guilty and assessed 360 days credit loss for this Division A offense. However, this offense was reduced to a Division D by the Chief Disciplinary Officer, and subject was assessed 90 days credit loss. ICC notes that all time constraints and due process has been afforded, and subject had no new information which was not available at the time of the hearing. Therefore, ICC elects to affirm the 90 days credit loss. Subject also received a RVR on 5/24/89, charging him with unlawful assembly on 5/19/89. The RVR was adjudicated on 6/4/89, and subject was assessed 90 days credit loss for Division D offense. ICC notes that all time constraints and due process has been afforded. Subject had no new information which was not available at the time of the hearing. Therefore, ICC elects to affirm the 90 days credit loss. Committee notes a serious rules violation report dated 5/31/89 charging subject with force and violence is still pending. Subject will be retained in ADSEG pending on the outcome of this later CDC 115. Subject is aware of the program and visiting limitation in ADSEG. He indicates good health and is making satisfactory adjustment in the current placement. Signed, M. Botello, A.W. P. Silly, Lieutenant D. Fearson, CC2. A few weeks later, Grattan got into another scuffle with a few more Fresno Bulldogs who had decided to back Cabada's play. This CDC 115 read, CDC 115 Incident Rules Violation Report. On July 2nd, 1989, at approximately 13:25 hours, while working as Administrative Segregation Yard Officer, I observed inmate Grattan E12048 3A03 111 up run from the handball court to the shower area, at which time three more inmates, later identified as inmates Villanueva E08103 3A03-1051, Moreno D55544 3A03 1091, and Perez D01991 3A03 139 up, also run to the shower area from different locations from the yard. I further observed inmate Grattan strike inmate Solis D57851 3A03 1441 in the face with a closed fist. Three other inmates were later identified as Ruiz D18736 3A03 1021, Villegas D97185 3A03 108 up, and Fonseca D35727 144 up were with Solis at the time of the altercation and also identified by me as victims of the altercation. I then ordered the combatants to stop fighting. When this failed, it necessitated the discharge of one 264 multiple baton round from the 37mm gas gun to quell the disturbance. The combatants then assumed a prone position on the ADSEG yard. Staff responded to the yard, and all of the inmates were removed from the yard without further incident. Reporting employee, CO Wolsack, ADSEG F1 officer. Approximately 2 weeks later, Grattan found himself in front of yet another disciplinary officer, and said chrono read, on July 15, 1989, inmate Grattan appeared before me in good health and was prepared to proceed with the hearing. He was given a copy of the charges and all pertinent reports more than 24 hours prior to the hearing, and informed that the disposition in this matter would not become final pending review and approval by the Chief Disciplinary Hearing Officer. Upon this approval, a completed copy of the CDC 115 will be issued. The subject did not request any witnesses to be present at the hearing. Subject waived the assignment of an investigative employee. I read the charges to inmate Grattan, and he denies being guilty of the charge, stating, I didn't start the fight. I did hit the guy. I was only defending myself. Findings. Based on the information in the rules violation report, subject's own admission of guilt, I am finding inmate Grattan guilty as charged. Signed, J.W. Harkness, Correctional Lieutenant. The very next day, Grattan got into yet another physical altercation on the yard. This time, he was on a mission to attack Robert Chino Corion. a well-known leader of the Fresno Bulldogs and a priority NR target. The CDC 115 read, CDC 115 Incident Rules Violation Report. On July 16, 1989, at approximately 1200 hours, I observed inmate J. Perez, D. 01991, 3803, 139 up, Grattan, E. 12048, 3803, 111 up, Padilla, D. 38245, 3803, 2081, and carry on D 00614 3803 208 up, involved in a physical altercation on yard 2 of the administrative segregation yard. All 4 of the inmates were equally aggressive in their attitude. I ordered the combatant inmates to halt, and they continued to fight, which required the use of my state-issued 37mm serial number D00267. One shot was fired to quell the disturbance. Both yards were ordered to assume a prone position, and they complied. The yard was recalled without further incident, and the inmates were placed in mechanical restraints and medically cleared by the MTA Stillwell. Disposition. Inmate was placed on 10 days CTQ, credit for 5 days served from 7/17/89 to 7/29/89 on CTQ beginning 7/17/89 through 7/29/89. Loss of 90 days credit under Division D offense. Man, this stuff is dry. I hope you guys are still listening. 40 hours extra duty to be completed by 8/28/89. Refer to ICC for confirmation of time loss. Signed, W. Ledbetter, Lieutenant. By this time, Grattan had truly kicked up a lot of CSP Corcoran dust. He had now been involved in far more physical altercations than anyone else in the ASU, and he had continued to be a threat to the safety and security of the institution and other inmates. He was making a name for himself. He had put in a lot of work, and he was considered a dedicated member of the Nuestra. However, among prison staff, he was considered a serious disciplinary problem, the instigator behind all of his fist fights, and the cause of a lot of the unnecessary complication experienced in the ADSEG section of the prison. The classification committee decided they had had enough of Grattan's inability to program and his continued attacks on other inmates. The ICC would vent their frustration in an ICC chrono which read, ICC classification dated 7/25/89. Grattan was placed in ADSEG on 5/4/89 for participation in a North-South Mexican confrontation in the Facility C yard. The RVR in this matter has been adjudicated as numerous other CDC 115s which subject has received since he has been in ADSEG. Committee notes 2 additional RVR rule violation reports, which he has received while in ADSEG. One on 7/2/89 charging subject with physical altercation log 7-89-3A-34. This RVR was adjudicated on 7/15/89. Subject was found guilty and assessed 90 days LOC under Division D offense. LOC is loss of credits. ICC notes that all constraints in due process have been afforded and that there is no new information that was not available at the time of the hearing. Therefore, ICC elects to affirm the 90 days credit loss. Also noted is a RVR dated 7/16/89, log number 7-89-3A-81, charging subject with physical altercation. This RVR was adjudicated on 7/21/89. Subject was found guilty and assessed 90 days credit loss under his Division D offense. ICC notes that all time constraints in due process have been afforded and that subject has no new information which was not available at the hearing. Therefore, ICC elects to confirm the 90 days credit loss. Committee also notes a shoe term assessment of 3 months for the force and violence RVR, noted 7/2/89. Committee elects to affirm the shoe term, however, notes that the shoe term expired on 7/12/89. Committee notes that Grattan has been a serious disciplinary problem while at the institution and that his disciplinary infractions have continued even after lockup in ADSE. All disciplinary matters have been violent situations generally involving physical altercations. The confidential folder indicates that Grattan is a part of the Northern structure and that much of the violent actions on his part have resulted from his activity with the Northern structure. During this hearing, Grattan indicated that he would continue to promote violence whenever confronted with enemies of the Northern structure. For this reason, ICC feels that Grattan should be assigned to Corcoran Shoe as an indeterminate shoe term due to his high violence potential and his affiliation with the Northern structure. This is now being referred to the CSR recommendation for Corcoran Shoe indeterminate shoe term. Grattan is a 25-year-old first-termer, received Corcoran 4/13/89 from DVI RC for level 3 placement. Subject was originally received CDC on 3/17/89 from Stanislaus County for the commitment offense of sales of controlled substance and escape with the term of 4 years. Prior arrest history consists of possession of a illegal weapon, health and safety code violations, RSP, PT, burglary, assault and battery, resisting PO, and escape. There is no history of arson or sex offenses noted. However, subject has a non-controlling case of escape on 12/1/1987. Subject walked away from his work detail at the Stanislaus Honor Farm. No prior terms. Regarding holds and detainers, subject has a possible warrant from Stanislaus County and the Modesto Sheriff's Office. CDC 812 indicates enemies and gang affiliation with Northern structure. Grattan will be retained in ADSEC pending review by CSR and transferred to Corcoran Shoe. Grattan is aware of the program and visiting limitations in ADSEC. He indicates good health, but his adjustment in ADSEC seems as stormy as his adjustment in GP. Signed T. Simpson, AW, R. Priolo, Lieutenant, D. Pearson, CC3. On August 24th, 1989, based upon his disruptive behavior, Grattan was endorsed for Corcoran Shoe for retention on an indeterminate shoe status. Man, he gave himself that indeterminate shoe. He should have never said what he said in front of that committee. That's just my opinion, though.